our guests coming in. Thank you so much for joining us in this afternoon. Buon pomeriggio a tutti e benvenuti all'evento. Welcome to the event about the novel Tina, Mafia Soldier. I am Chiara Durazzini and I am the event coordinator at I Am Books. I Am Books is an Italian-American bookstore in the heart of the North End in Boston. So please come visit us. We are beginning to have a lot of events after the summer break. We are having October and November pretty full. So check out our newsletter and our website. So today we are talking about a very, very interesting topic, which is mainly women in criminal organizations in Italy. And I have with me these wonderful guests. I'm very, very excited. Robin Pickering-Iazzi, Juliet Grames, and the author of the book, Maria Rosa Cutrufelli. Let me introduce them to you a little bit better. I'm going to read their bios. Let's begin with the author. Maria Rosa Cutrufelli was born in Messina, in Sicily, and raised shuttling back and forth between Sicily and Bologna. She now resides in Rome, a major figure in Italian feminist movements. She boasts a long, prolific career as a journalist, cultural critic, and novelist. After earning her degree in literature from the University of Bologna, she founded and directed the journal Tutte Storie. She also authored several works of travel literature largely devoted to Africa, where she lived for 3 years. Her works have been translated into 20 languages. Nice, complimenti. And now the translator of the book that was written by Maria Rosa in Italian. Now we have the English version by Robin Pickering-Iazzi. She's a professor of Italian and comparative literature at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She has published numerous books and articles on the Italian mafias, focusing in particular on how they operate in Italian literature, film, new media, and daily life. Among her recent publications are Dead Silent, Life Stories of Girls and Women Killed by the Italian Mafias, 1878-2018, Le geografie della mafia nella vita e nella letteratura dell'Italia contemporanea, The Mafia in Italian Lives and Literature, Life Sentences and Their Geographies, and Tina, Mafia Soldier, an English translation of the acclaimed novel Canto al deserto, storia di Tina, soldato di mafia, by, here we have her, Maria Rosa Cutrufelli. She is currently working on a book about women and the 'ndrangheta. Last but not least, we have the editor. I want to remind you that the book is published by Soho Crime. Editor Juliet Grames is editorial director at Soho Press, where she curates the Soho Crime imprint. She's the author of 2 novels about the Italian South. Benvenute, welcome all. And I will open the floor to our conversation. Of course, I want to remind our online guests that this is a webinar, so you're not gonna see each other, you're not gonna see your face, you're just gonna see the 4 of us, but please feel free to comment in the chat or to ask questions in the Q&A that you can see below. Yes, please comment, let us know if you have read the book, if you haven't, why you're curious about it, if you have questions, whatever it comes to your mind, we will be happy to comment and answer. Now, I would like to start from the title of the book, because the Italian title is Canto al deserto, storia di Tina, soldato di mafia. And I would love to understand why Canto al Deserto. Now, Maria Rosa speaks some English, but I will be happy to help her out, and maybe Robin too, to kind of translate in English, and you can speak Italian, Maria Rosa.
Sorry, preferisco parlare italiano, parlo molto male l'inglese. Allora, Canto al deserto è il verso di una poesia di un poeta siciliano, di un poeta dialettale siciliano che
Okay,
però
so
ogni
it's a
tanto...
verse of a poem by a dialect, a Sicilian dialect poet.
E questa poesia bellissima parlava di un ulivo in mezzo al fuoco del vulcano che, che muoveva le foglie ma non parlava agli altri perché era solo.
Okay, so the poem is about an olive tree that has grown in the middle of the volcano fire, of the volcano lava, and he moves, the tree moves the leaves, but doesn't speak because he's by himself or by itself.
Ed è un po' la condizione delle persone, di tante persone che parlano del proprio dolore, della propria fatica e non riescono a farsi sentire, come la protagonista del mio libro.
And so this is about people who cannot talk about their pain, about their struggles, just like the protagonist of the book. Nice, wonderful. Yeah, go ahead.
Ma penso che forse in Italia lo si capisce di più perché anche se questo poeta che è grande si chiamava, è morto, Santo Calì, non è molto conosciuto, ma in Sicilia sì.
Okay, so in Sicily, this poet is very well known. Santo Calì is his name. He's not living anymore, but he's very well known in Italy, but mostly in Sicily. So probably the Italian audience understand the title better.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, wonderful. So, Robin, tell us a little bit about why you guys decided to get together, including Juliet, and decided to translate this book. Quindi, Maria Rosa, perché avete deciso di mettere insieme le vostre forze e pubblicare il libro negli Stati Uniti? Because in Italy, the original Italian version is from the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Vero? È del 1994, se non sbaglio?
Esatto.
Okay, so a few years have gone by.
Yeah, I have to say, and I've read every book that Maria Rosa has written up till today, as well as her articles. And Canto al Deserto, Tina Mafia Soldier remains my favorite. And so it was in 2019, 2020 that I had a pause. I wanted to do a different kind of creative work and thinking. And I thought, okay, it's time. I would really like to translate this book. And so I wrote to Maria Rosa and I asked her, I said, what would you think about me translating the book? And she very kindly and generously put her faith in me and said, yes, yes. And so it started there. And after I had gotten several chapters done, and a dear friend and scholar and author herself, Edi Giunta, who knows Maria Rosa for years and years and years, I had written to her saying I was going to do this project. And she said, oh, And she got in touch with Juliet Grames and said, you might be interested in this. And so that was, in a sense, what got everything rolling. And I'll let Juliet herself speak about, kind of why she did get behind this book, because it was in its initial stages. And man, you want to jump in, Juliet?
I'd love to. Yeah, I love this book so much, which is, I think, the most important qualification for an editor to find an acquisition and really want to fight for it. So at Soho Crime, we publish international and multicultural literary crime fiction. We have many mysteries and thrillers, but we also have other books that are somehow related to the crime fiction universe. There's many genres within it. And this book, so much of what's special about it is not just in the subject matter, which I had never read about elsewhere. And I'm an amateur student of Southern Italian literature, specifically of mafia literature and of women in the mafia. I know how scarce those topics are in the literary landscape. And so when I encountered this text, I felt that there was an urgent need for it to be available in English, but also the form of it. It rejects the traditional forms of a crime novel, and yet it's so much about crime. In many ways, it evokes the rhythms of true crime, which is very popular right now. And I think the truth within the text shines through in a way that makes the fiction ring on that true crime level as well. So for me, the text itself was very special. And like I said, certainly a passion project for me because of the subject matter. And I knew that there would be other people who were passionately interested as well. And as we've had these conversations at Soho, there were many angles to the text that appealed to many other readers who are coming to it. Tina's story is from the time and place where it is born is a proto-trans narrative. It really captures what the experience of being a person who is not born into the body of their gender is like, especially when the lexicon in which that person lives genders every noun and adjective associated with them. And for me, the working in English with a topic like that is much more straightforward than coming from the Italian. And I was so interested to see how Maria Rosa had broken ground on this incredibly relevant conversation, especially in the extremely patriarchal social structures of the mafia and Sicilian culture in general, Southern Italian culture in general. For me, there was just so many aspects of the book that I'd never seen before. And that's the main thing I'm looking for when I'm looking for acquisitions for my list. So for us at Soho, it was a great privilege to be able to publish this book.
Yeah, in fact, Tina is called a masculidda or something like that, right, Maria Rosa? È soprannominata.
Sì, a masculidda, proprio perché assume un ruolo maschile, un ruolo terribile perché non è soltanto, non fiancheggia solo la mafia, ma usa le armi. E questo è fra l'altro molto raro, avviene molto raramente. Ci sono donne che comandano nella mafia, ma come dire, hanno ruoli che non prevedono l'uso delle armi. E invece in quegli anni a Gela il libro è ispirato a una storia vera.
Okay, let me stop you and try to remember
sorry,
that I have to translate. Maybe Robin, you can help me out, but yes, she's called La Masculidda because not only she has some sort of a role in the mafia, but also uses weapons. And although in history, since, if I'm not mistaken, the late 1700s, women covered a big role in mafia and criminal organization, it's very rare that they do use weapons. However, the character of Tina was inspired by a woman who really existed in Gela. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about her. Maria Rosa and Robin with helping me.
Yeah.
Sì,
Maria
Did
Rosa,
I
se puoi
skip
parlare
anything,
di più
Robin?
di questa figura storica di Emanuela Azzarelli, com'era?
sì, sì. No, no, I understand.
Oh.
Ehm, sì, è ispirata a una storia che ha fatto scalpore proprio perché questa ragazza comandava una banda di ragazzini che hanno ammazzato persone, cioè, quindi hanno usato diciamo la violenza mafiosa e questa era una novità.
Yeah, so this real woman, Emanuela Azzarelli, what year was it? The 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, late 80s
Uh,
and yes, and early
so late
90s.
80s, early 90s. She was the head of a gang of young boys, and so she, you know, she was commanding them and committing criminal activities, even killing.
Mm, mm. E questo era nuovo, era
This was new,
sconvolgente.
completely new. Yes.
Mm, mm. E allora io sono siciliana e conosco molto bene le donne siciliane che, come dire, hanno una grande forza, ma hanno anche ehm, ehm, una grande impotenza all'interno della società, ma hanno una grande potenza nella famiglia. E quindi conosco bene questo, ma c'è questo mondo sommerso delle donne invece o fiancheggiatrici di mafia o mafiose che mi era sconosciuto e lo volevo conoscere.
And in fact, let me quote you, and then we will try to translate what she said. But in the book, you say Sicilian women, either Amazons or geishas, for battle or for harems, Eumenides or Erinis, as my uncle judgmentally declares. So yes, it was the first time that a woman commits violence crime, because in the mafia women has always been present but also submitted, right? Did I
Yeah,
say
the submersed world, so that, you know, as Maria Rosa said, she's Sicilian. She knows Sicilian women very well. In fact, also did research to write a different book too earlier about Sicilian women, and they have this huge power within the family. And she knew these different forms of power, but there's also this submerged world of women who are in the mafia and who also confront a certain impotence. And in Tina's case, instead, she went after the power and asserted it, even, well, with Emanuela Azzarelli's case. And we also see it in Tina. But she went after the power, acquired it, and used it also to kill and to impose herself on the community. I don't know if you want to say more
yes,
to Maria Rosa and go
yes,
on about your discovery of the world.
of
Sì, era un mio bisogno di conoscere questo lato oscuro, questo
so it
lato
was
sommerso, questo mondo sommerso femminile.
okay, it was my need to discover more about this dark side, this submersed side of this feminine world that we don't know much about, di cui non sappiamo molto. Maria Rosa?
neanche ora, il
Not even
mondo...
now.
Not even. Anche, in realtà ci sono anche pochi libri che studiano questo fenomeno. Si parla tanto dei boss mafiosi, ma dietro o davanti anche a ogni boss mafioso ci sono donne che o fiancheggiano o gestiscono gli affari della mafia.
Right. So we don't know much about all of this, not even nowadays, even though we know that usually next to a mafia boss or, you know, an important mafia man, there is a woman, and that helps him out in different ways. Sometimes she manages the affairs, the business of the mafia. She creates relations, right? Crea relazioni.
Yeah. E di questo si sa ancora poco, molto
And I
poco.
must say that at the end of the beautiful novel, Robin wrote a note, a translator's note that talks, you know, pretty intensely about the role of women in the criminal organizations, right? And she also, I remember she's citing il maxi processo that I remember as a little girl there was going on the maxi trial against many mafia bosses that went on when in the late 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yeah, you have.
And the women, the
1984,
role of
85.
women. Maria Rosa, parliamo del maxi processo, no? E lì le donne sono state incredibili, hanno difeso a
Sì.
spada tratta i mafiosi.
No, ci sono anche quelle che invece si sono, come Rita Atri, hanno perso la vita per dissociarsi da quel mondo. E quindi il mio, io quello che volevo era calarmi in queste vite così diverse dalla mia, ma che sono a contatto con la mia, perché viviamo nella stessa società, nello stesso mondo, e quindi non possiamo ignorarci.
Yes. So Maria Rosa is also saying that many women, you know, many women have helped and are helping the mafia bosses, but so many also lost their lives in order to get out of the organizations. And this is something that, although there are women that has not much to do with her in the sense of their lives, on the other hand, she feels connected to them because we all live in the same place, in the same cultural environment. And so there is, I would say, a sort of an osmosis, right?
Yes.
We absorb everything, and especially they are women. We know they are women as we are. So Maria Rosa, and here we come to your character, or I would say your figure. Maria Rosa Cutrufelli come giornalista e autrice che scrive un libro in prima persona, writes a book in the first person of a journalist that goes to Gela, the city of Gela in Sicily, to explore and discover more about this mysterious young girl, Tina, whom she's heard is connected with the mafia. There's something biographical, I don't know, but tell us more about you and why you wrote this book and how much of you there is in the co-protagonist, I would say.
Gela per me è stata molto importante perché io sono siciliana, ma non di quella parte della Sicilia. Però da adulta, cioè sono andata via dalla Sicilia da bambina. Sono voluta tornare da grande, proprio come atto politico-culturale per capire, e ho scelto Gela per tanti motivi. Il principale è che Gela è veramente una città emblematica di che cosa è successo in Sicilia negli ultimi 30 anni, 40 anni. Gela era la speranza dello sviluppo, ed è poi invece diventata la tragedia dello sviluppo.
Oh, no audio.
Yeah. So Maria Rosa is not from Robin. Help me out, because Maria Rosa is not from Gela. However, you feel connected to the city, right? Even because Gela is an important example of a city that was supposed to be the future, represent the future, but instead is the symbol of decadence. Sono detto bene, Robin? C'è da aggiungere qualcosa?
See, and Gela was supposed to be also this symbol of hope. So yes, the future and hope. And Maria Rosa, she's from Messina, but she chose Gela specifically. She chose to go back to Sicily as a political, cultural form of activism, and go back. And she chose Gela for a variety of reasons, among these the fact that it was a city that was supposed to be this hope, for a good future, for progress with Petrolchimico. I think that's, yeah.
Yes, and in fact, Gela is the other protagonist, right? È l'altra protagonista of the book, because you describe it a lot in the book.
Io ho vissuto 3 anni a Gela, e quindi l'ho conosciuta bene. A Gela c'era una classe operaia, c'era lavoro, e quindi era la speranza. Ma in realtà il petrolchimico non poteva essere una speranza, e quindi questa speranza si è poi trasformata in una dannazione. Perché? Perché intanto ha portato la mafia a Gela. A Gela non c'era la mafia. Con il petrolchimico, con i soldi, è arrivata anche la mafia.
Yeah, this is very interesting. With Gela, yes, represent the hope because of this petrolchimico, this big chemical industry that was born in the 60s, right? Negli anni 60.
Sì.
Yeah, yeah. And so it brings a working class, it brings jobs. However, it also brings mafia, because there's money going around with this new business. And that is typical, unfortunately, right?
Right. Where there's money or any resource to, for a monopoly, then immediately there's also the mafia for speculation and corruption. Yeah, that's a really important point.
And it's not even only in Sicily. No, go ahead, Juliet.
I was going to say, I think one of the special facets of this book, in the depiction of Gela, where we see the total entrenchment of a city, the installation of the mafia to affect every layer of society, every political function, every economic function, every family function. And so, the structure of the novel, we have this anonymous journalist who comes and she does a series of interviews, right? And these circle closer and closer to her actual subject, Tina. But in the process, we see all these people who cross Tina's path, and we see all the different ways that the mafia infiltrates every facet of life. And I think that is what is so crucial to depict for our English language readers. You know, we see representations of mafia. We see the Sopranos, or we see The Godfather. We see when the protagonists are the mafia characters, which, you know, Tina is, of course, but what you don't actually see are the structures of desperation that create a reliance on the mafia, and also create a society where even good actors have no choice but to collaborate, right? So, and I think that is so powerfully done here. You just see a city in the throes of these choices, and the sort of the desperation of that affects the society in this one. It's funny that you mentioned the Maxi trials earlier too, right? Because this story is set in the same era. I can only imagine living during that time when there must have been so much desperation that change was going to be impossible. And then the people who are fighting against that corruption, that intrinsic violence at every level of society, they're putting their lives on the line. So many people died, you know, in assassinations and other acts of crime related to the mafia and the suppression of the mafia. And I think this incredibly human and social depiction of all of that here is something that is unique to this book, and is something that it brings to the table to really enrich our conversation.
Right. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, even good actors then can be blocked, in the sense of Ignazio, who is a friend of the narrator, and who tries to help Tina and her family. But at a certain point, his wife receives, flowers and condolences as a sign to warn him off. And he is warned off. So, that point, and I also think structurally, as Juliet says, the fact that we have these very different perspectives going through the novel, as we begin, the journalist is about to enter Gela. And so for English readers, for those of us who do not live in territories that are governed by the mafia, we learn step by step, along with the narrator, about how these communities work, and about these different kinds of threats. And as Juliet said, the infiltration into each sector and level of society. So it's important, because that way readers gain a deep understanding, and then can understand Tina better. So it's wonderful for that, and brilliant.
Una cosa mi premeva dire in questo libro, e cioè che l'industrializzazione da sola non produce necessariamente benessere, se non c'è tutto il resto, cioè se non c'è appunto cura della società, se non c'è cura di tutto ciò di cui le vite hanno bisogno, quindi cultura, istruzione, relazioni. A Gela è mancato questo, è mancato, c'è stato uno sviluppo senza progresso, no, uno sviluppo, c'è stato un tentativo di industrializzazione che non ha portato il progresso sperato, anzi.
Yeah, so the industrialization, it's by itself cannot work unless there is everything that surrounds it in, I would say, good shape. So a cultural support, a political support, but in Gela, unfortunately, this didn't happen. So there was this sudden development, right? Uno sviluppo improvviso, Maria Rosa, with no support from the other areas.
E quindi è diventata preda anche delle organizzazioni criminali.
And so it became prey of the criminal organizations. what does it look like now? I don't know if any of our listeners have been to Gela recently, or you guys, you Maria Rosa, sei stata a Gela recentemente. Come è?
Non molto recentemente, qualche anno fa. E
Mhm.
devo dire che mi ha colpito molto negativamente il tipo di sviluppo che c'è stato. Cioè, i quartieri sono diventati bruttissimi,
Mm,
brutti. Le spiagge si sono privatizzate. È
Mm.
diventato, è diventata una città, era una bella città. A me piaceva,
Mm.
nonostante tutto,
yeah.
mi piaceva.
So, so
Però,
Maria Rosa has been there a few years ago, but she was not very impressed by how Gela is looking now. Some blocks, quarters are not looking good. There is
Mhm.
degrade.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
and the beaches have become
the be-
privatized.
right,
There's that
exactly.
wonderful scene in the novel where we see that a progressive mayor has managed to reclaim and clean up a length of the beach and that area that's kind of coming to life a bit, but now with the privatization of beach areas and things, that's not for the public good at that
Right,
point.
and I can only imagine what the criminal organization are influencing on the privatization of the beaches.
Right.
That's another
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know if Eddie Junta is with us right now,
let
but I
me
know that
check.
she
Eddie,
just
are you
went
with
back
us?
this summer.
Eddie
She was,
Giunta, write in the chat
yeah,
how did you see Gela, since you've been probably there recently?
yeah, last summer, putting people on the spot.
Yes, little bit. Okay, there's a Q&A. Ah, okay, there are some moving initiatives. Okay, moving meaning what? Moving, like commoventi? See? Yeah, that'd be nice. So, I also would like to talk a little bit. Let me see. Like la Madonna della Cura. Right. Yes. Okay, we have hope. Right? Abbiamo speranza, eh?
Ma la
Maria
Madonna
Rosa?
della Cura, cos'è? What is la Madonna della Cura?
no, io ho detto che non c'è cura,
No,
non
ma la
c'è cura.
Madonna della Cura.
La
Is it
Madonna
an
della Cura.
A
initiative?
Gela.
Mm.
An initiative? A
Non,
mural by a Palermo artist.
non la conosco.
Because maybe it's
Nemmeno
more
io.
recent.
Ah,
Yeah, maybe
ok.
it's a more recent initiative that you, Maria Rosa, didn't see. Un murale di un artista di Palermo.
Ecco,
Eh.
ecco.
Beh, si parla molto ultimamente di una necessità della cura, cioè se non c'è cura non ci può essere una società civile degna di questo nome, non ci può essere uno sviluppo giusto. Quindi la cura è è un progetto politico-culturale e non mi meraviglia se a Palermo appunto è comparso un murale che,
It's in Gela, è a Gela di un artista di Palermo.
ecco,
La
non
Madonna
lo
della
sapevo.
Cura, Edvige ha mandato un link per vederlo, poi ci possiamo
Eh,
cliccare dopo e dare un'occhiata.
mm.
Now let's talk a little bit about the translation work with Robin. Quindi Maria Rosa, parliamo un pochettino della traduzione. because I have to say that I have read the book only in English, but I could imagine the Italian, right? Yeah, I can. It was a fun game for me to kind of trying to guess how it was written in Italian. And I have to say that some parts are, or some words are dialect that you often kept. But also there are some structural phrases, the structure of some phrases that you have to translate. So there is an example that I can't remember. There is instead of direct object, Sicilians use an indirect object to create more of a distance. But tell us a little bit about that, for example, or some other example.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that that was the main one where I tried as a translator to convey this because it was a major part of that passage. And it also came up in another instance then in the dialogue when the same character was speaking. So it was something that absolutely had to be dealt with. And there are many positions that translators take, and they say, well, so it reads smoothly in English, I'm getting rid of this. I decided to take a risk and chose a preposition to create the distance with an English verb that would have taken a direct object to try to convey. Because if it stood out in Italian, that was not standard Italian. So if it stood out in that way there, then it should stand out in English that way. So I went through and I did the main passage that way in the other instance. And what was very interesting then, and it was risky. It was risky because I thought now our reader's just going to know what the hell is going on. How will they make sense and things? But I tried to make it so that it would and be accurate with the text. And it was interesting because when Juliet then read it, and let me tell you, she went through with a fine-tooth comb because what you read today is very, very polished. I sent to her the first version I sent, I thought was polished. I had taken care. And boy, we went through three rounds, I think, each time really pulling out anything that was on. But when Julia read the passage that had, what would be a grammatical error in English, she said, no, I think this should stay because this is one way that we can convey how it would have been in the dialect form and things. So no, it's a marvelous, and thank you, Juliet. It was really good to have that support. I mean, you as editor, would there have been, I don't think there are other ways to do that.
In my opinion, anything that makes a book specific makes it more powerful. And for me, especially, I work on a lot of translations. Anything that mainstreamifies a text to make it more comfortable for the English language reader should be interrogated. I think that the reading experience should be enjoyable for sure, but I don't think it necessarily has to be familiar. And I also think I would love to hear Maria Rosa's take on the original text, which in its own way is in fact a translation, right? We're living in a world that is speaking in a Sicilian language, and the bulk of the text is written in Italian. And so already I know you must have been making translation choices to express the ideas and when to use, dialect, if we're using the word dialect to refer to the very rich way that Sicilians speak. I love the empowerment of geographical and population dialects and languages and the ways we speak in the real world to somehow find ways that those can function in written literature. And this book does many, many interesting things there. So yeah. Maria Rosa, I would like to hear about your choices.
Ok, Maria Rosa, tu hai dovuto probabilmente fare delle scelte perché probabilmente questi personaggi avrebbero dovuto parlare in dialetto siciliano. Invece tu
Certo.
l'hai messi chiaramente in italiano standard, altrimenti io non avrei capito niente. Da toscana
No,
quale sono?
no, ma infatti è così. Io quello che mi sono sforzata di fare è di rendere la sintassi, il suono del discorso siciliano, ma le parole, ma gli aggettivi, i sostantivi sono italiani, tranne qualche piccolo inserto che non potevo dare in italiano.
Yeah, so I made a big effort in keeping a Sicilian syntaxes
Sound,
and sound, but of course I had to use Italian words. So it feels like there was a sort of an intersection between the two languages, una sorta di intersezione tra le due lingue, la lingua regionale, the regional language Sicilian and Italian, so that everybody could understand. However, Maria Rosa kept a few words here and there that were not, they wouldn't have worked in a standard Italian, like a masculidda.
See, it's also interesting that the very topic of language is also an issue that's brought up explicitly in the novel with Tina's uncle, because the narrator comments that he was speaking in standard Italian, whereas, you know, in another situation, it would have been dialect. So it's interesting, Maria Rosa, that you bring out this very topic in the novel as well, and how certain characters represent also the tendency in daily life in Sicily to shift languages between dialect versus a standard Italian. And there's also the very minor character of a teacher who always used Sicilian and would go to a meeting and maybe start with a couple of words of Italian, but then shift right back into Sicilian. So it does run even as a theme through the book, this idea about language and the ways that language can also be used to distance people or, you know, show that they're intimate friends. It's, you know, quite interesting.
Yes.
Beh, l'uso del dialetto nelle opere letterarie è molto cambiato nella nostra epoca. Gli antichi non usavano mai il dialetto.
Yeah, so the use of dialect is very much changed compared to many years back, because, you know, in the past, authors didn't use the dialect.
Per esempio, Verga fa dire ai suoi pescatori, ai suoi poveri siciliani poveri, parlando del padre, gli fa dire babbo. Babbo è toscano.
Toscano.
In
Yes.
siciliano vuol dire stupido.
Stupido,
Però Verga ha usato la parola italiana, toscana. Oggi non si fa più.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad because it sounds strange. But yeah, so she was saying that Giovanni Verga, a famous Sicilian author, is having some of his characters, in particular the fishermen, to say, in order to say father, dad, they are saying babbo. That is not Sicilian, it's Tuscan dialect, because in Sicilian, babbo means stupid or dumb. Yes.
Oh.
Well, I
And
recently restaged La Giara di Pirandello, La Giara by Pirandello,
Yeah.
and Pirandello himself made two versions, one in Sicilian and one in Tuscan, and it's very strange, I have to say, to have all the Sicilian olive pickers to speak in Tuscan. In Tuscan, yeah.
Yeah.
Molto interessante, very interesting. Any other things to say? Maybe our listeners would like to ask questions or make comments. About the dialect, it came to my mind, Maria Rosa, riguardo il dialetto, the guy that is in the arcade, il ragazzo che lavora all'arcade, at one point you say, I mean, the protagonist says, the journalist, I was surprised that he was speaking all standard Italian.
Right. Yeah.
Because I have the feeling that nowadays, you know, many young people are not. What's the situation? Are they keeping up with the dialect or not that much, the newest generation?
Io penso che siamo bilingui,
Esatto.
che l'Italia è caratterizzata da dialetti molto diversi
Mhm.
e l'italiano è la lingua comune, però c'è come una voglia di rivalutare il dialetto nella lingua letteraria per dare sapore, per rinnovare la lingua. E è un'operazione complicata, ma siamo tutti bilingui in qualche modo.
So we are all bilingual because we know that each region has its own different dialect, their regional languages. Nowadays, there is a little bit of a rediscover of the dialects, in spite of standard Italian being the main language with whom we can communicate, right? But yes, there is. I heard there are some beautiful initiatives about maintaining dialects. Yeah, molto, molto interessante. Tina, Mafia Soldier. For all of us who have registered, we have a little discount. You have the code here in the chat, but we will send you by email also. I don't know if you want to say something else, because Maria Rosa is a pleasure to have her here. È un piacere avere qui Maria Rosa, quindi se volete dire qualcos'altro, Maria Rosa, vuoi dire qualcos'altro? Per favore, aggiungi.
Sì, che per me questo libro e il mio soggiorno a Gela è stata una lezione di vita anche, è stata una scoperta appunto, di un mondo femminile di cui sapevo poco o niente, nonostante io ci vivessi in mezzo.
Okay, so this my staying in Gela to research the book has been a life lesson for me, because in spite of the fact that I've been there and I'm Sicilian, I didn't know many of the things that I discovered about women in criminal organizations, especially mafia. Ho tradotto bene, Robin?
Sì, benissimo.
I'm not a professional translator, and
E poi è difficile
è un po' difficile.
ricordare
I thought it was
perché
easier. Anyhow, not only for us women, but also and especially for men, this is a very interesting book. Very interesting, the role of women in mafia, with especially this beautiful story that has some, that has an inspiration from the true story, da una storia vera, veramente accaduta. Yes.
Il finale è diverso dalla storia vera.
It's okay, it's okay. It's
Sì,
okay.
Ma non si dice.
No, that's good though, because it means even if people read the news article, the book won't be spoiled for them.
right.
No.
Good point, Juliet.
No, it's really, really, it's fun to read. Fun, I don't know if it's the good word, right? But you want to read more and more to see what happens to Tina, to the journalist, but also to the beautiful surrounding characters, especially other
Yes.
women in a professional, in a position of a professional career, that, you know, it's been wonderful to see that, because nowadays I know many Sicilian women who have amazing careers.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
And that's an important element, Chiara, because the lawyer, you have many female characters in different kinds of roles. So this idea that the stereotype of the Sicilian woman dressed in black and tied to the oven, yeah, this one blows it apart. So it's great.
Yeah, totally,
È uno
because
stereotipo, è uno
Sì.
stereotipo.
è uno stereotipo, because really I know many Sicilian women with amazing careers.
Right.
Maria Rosa, veramente tante donne siciliane stanno avanzando moltissimo nel campo lavorativo.
Sì, ma le donne siciliane sono sempre state, come dire, presenti nella società siciliana, presenti con anche una forza importante. Però, come dire, questa forza è come se si sperdesse quando deve confrontarsi con il sociale, con gli ostacoli esterni, Però le donne siciliane non sono mai state silenziose, mai state in silenzio. Hanno sempre fatto le loro battaglie e a volte le hanno anche vinte.
So Sicilian women have always been strong, but of course they always have to put up with the social and cultural environment that surrounds her. However, they've always been strong and willing to fight.
Right. Yeah.
Sì. Allora, cari tutti, cari tutte, in particolare, because I see among our guests we have a majority of women. Grazie, thank you so much. This was beautiful. I really enjoyed the books. Congratulations on Robin for translating this and bringing to us in the States. Maria Rosa, complimenti per il bellissimo libro. Hai qualche progetto, un altro libro?
Sì, avrei già dovuto consegnarlo, ma sono in ritardo, molto in ritardo.
Ok, we'll be waiting. Aspettiamo.
Ok.
Yeah.
And also thank you, Juliet. Thank you for having the courage to, allowing this book to be published.
No, that's our privilege. I believe people are going to be reading it for years. I want to say a special thank you to you, Chiara, but also to I Am Books, and to anyone who's in the audience today. I want to say thank you for supporting a fabulous independent bookstore. And independent bookstores are the gateway to culture and to recommendations that some of the big retailers, whose names I won't mention here, they will never give you this kind of cultural experience. So thank you, I Am Books, and support your local independent bookstore.
I echo that. It's really an honor to be here with all of you and everybody in the audience. Thank you so much.
Grazie, thanks again Maria Rosa, Robin and Juliet. It's been a pleasure, è stato un piacere. Alla prossima volta. Ci vediamo ai prossimi eventi.
Sì,
Ciao.
benissimo. Ciao.
Thank you
Grazie.
a tutte e a tutti. Grazie a voi.
Ciao.